Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Analysis on Chain. Today we bring you something special, something that has been stuck in my craw for a couple of years now. I've been wanting to do a deep dive on this thing for some time. I only recently even started tinkering with it myself. Ladies and gentlemen, the project is ThorChain, a massive decentralized behemoth of an ecosystem running on all sorts of layer one stuff. We're here to break it down. Today, introducing, as always, I say it like it's a mystery because he is a man of mystery, Kaz.
Let's fucking go!
Right, hold on. Get the disclaimers out of the way. Let's do it properly, lads. Come on. Let's keep this non-biased and objective.
Yeah.
Let's get the disclaimers out of the way.
Of course, that's what we do. You want me to go first? I'll go first. All right. So my test was done with a couple $1,000s worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum using the saver swap mechanism. I still have that money floating around in there, and it is continuing to appreciate through the liquidity provided through one side of ThorChain's liquidity swapping. So I am actually making some money a little bit every day off of this project, and if that colors my opinion, I will leave it up to the jury because I do have opinions on this project outside of the fact that it made me some money.
My disclaimer is during my research, I did put in $89 worth of AVAX to try it out. And it is still in there in the Avalanche Savers Vault. So yeah, that's my disclaimer.
And I have absolutely fuck all to do with this. So if I hear any bias opinions or anything like that, I'm going to call you guys out. Just to let you know.
I expect it. I encourage it, and I embrace it like a Roman Christian headed for the crucifixion. Let's go.
I thought you was going to say criminal then. I expected like a criminal. You checked your mind. Anyway, I'm joking. Let's go.
Well, to be completely fair, in ancient Rome, Christians were criminals, but that's a total digression. ThorChain.
Cheers, guys. So, ThorChain. So, to be absolutely clear, ThorChain, it's a layer one based cross-chain protocol. Seen a few YouTubers make mistakes and calling this a project, or even someone just calling it a DEX, which is a little bit embarrassing. It's got its own blockchain. It's layer one. It uses the Cosmos SDK, which for those of you that have been with Analysis on Chain for a few months, you would have seen our deep dive on Viot to use Cosmos SDK, Software Development Kit. So I'll do a little recap on that later on. Now, ThorChain has been going since 2018. So it is one of the longer battle-tested protocols on the blockchain, and it primarily has a feature called ThorSwap, which is used for staking, bridging assets, lending, and for swaps, native swaps, I might add as well. So you're not actually using wrapped assets. It seems to be a mix of a community-run and slightly private-based project. More on that a little bit later. And in terms of the tech, the native swap is a very impressive technological feat that I've seen for only the second time, although I have recently seen on Twitter a couple of other projects, literally as of yesterday. I think one was on Cardano claiming that they'll be able to do the same thing as well. So what we're going to look into is who the team are behind it all, look into the tech, the risks involved, because there are risks, not only with ThorSwap, but also ThorChain, and the features of ThorSwap as well. And then we'll look into the Rune token a little bit, and just some other things that I've spotted as well regarding the protocol. Now, this will cover, because I must point out this ThorChain as a whole is an absolute beast of a project. There is so much. I've just sort of skimmed the surface on the features it's got. So I am only going to be focusing, as I said, a bit on Rune, ThorSwap, some of the features and the technology on this. There is so much more. I would probably need
we
weeks.
don't have the time to break down all of that, but the Rune token and the way it undergirds this ecosystem is definitely a key part of my interest. So this is why we ought to focus on that for the duration.
Absolutely. I've tried to sort of focus on the key bits and the interesting bits, I think, or the best features of the overall protocol. All right. So that's the intro. Let's have a look at the team. So for ThorChain, you can find some of the members of the team on here on GitLab. Now, I did read somewhere that I think there's like 40 plus developers. They used to have a GitHub which I think was active way in the past, but now they use GitLab. That seems to be where the majority of the work is done. I'll come on to that in a little bit. You've got Gavin McDermott, who heads up a company called Nine Realms, which sounds like something out of Game of Thrones, or Lord of the Rings. But he is the guy that's, I think they bought ThorChain a little while ago through his company. Now, Gavin, he's the publicly doxed founder of Nine Realms and owner of ThorChain. He very impressively managed to get private investment of just under $4 million back in 2021, which I'm pretty sure that was the year of COVID, wasn't it? Or was it 2020?
2020 was the outbreak. 21 was the fallout.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's a 2-year nightmare for everybody.
Oh God, yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah, but Gavin.
In terms of Gavin, as I said, he's doxed. He's got a really good LinkedIn profile. This guy seems to eat, breathe, and sleep technology. If you look at his experience, he's been pretty much living in it most of his life. Most of his working life, as well as having founding experience as well. So he does tick a lot of boxes in terms of experience in a technological field and how to run projects, and obviously has been able to secure investment as well. In terms of the rest of the team, they are seem to be anon. I have seen a lot of these guys lurking around in the Discord. I've been proactively, I've been answering queries and stuff. Discord itself has got, it reminds me, I have to say, it does remind me a lot of Casper and GMX that we've looked at in the past, in a sense that you've got a lot of information around the security updates, penetration testing, all the technical stuff, documentation, learning. I've never seen anyone have a question like dodged or ignored or anything like that. It's all very well explained in there. And these guys have been active in the Discord and keeping that going. But there are anon. There are quite a few anon people there. And obviously, as part of our objective analysis, we do like to have a look at their history to see, if people are, fit for the roles, etc. So without that information, that will be factored into the scores. But I suppose on the flip side, we do have to remember this has been going since 2018. So it does give a lot of confidence that despite this anon approach, which we've seen in other communities and stuff as well, it can work in terms of keeping a project going for, in crypto terms, seems to be a long time. Now, the other thing that worth pointing out with the team, on the, I think it's the activity, and you go to team, you can see that they have almost like real-time updates of people that come and go on the project. So there were some names. When I was having a look at the team, there was like 3 or 4 websites that had all these different names of people, and it's quite clear that some of those are out of date, because I spotted a few people on here that have now left. So this isn't RJP, by the way. This guy JP Thor, he's left the project, so I'm not going to reveal his full name and stuff. But he left, and he was listed on a website. I think he's also listed on GitHub as well, which is clearly no longer in use. So yeah, this is really interesting. I'm not really seeing this before, like a sort of real-time update to the team. But it would be expected for a a protocol that is, I suppose, got a lot of public-facing code and activity in relation to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, as mentioned, the preference here is to use GitLab. Now, thanks to T-Bro again for looking into this for us. So, on ThorChain, I think they have 16 projects in their sort of repo and sub-projects area, which are these ones here. I do recognise some of these. So, Bitfrost, I think, are used as part of their security. They help provide monitoring for the protocol. Ethereum, that's probably to do with the ability to buy Rune on places like Uniswap and SushiSwap. TSS, I'll come into that later. That's one of the... It works in tandem with their consensus of the Cosmos SDK Tendermint. And where's the Asgard? Asgard Dex, that's a DApp. And there's also an Asgard Vault as well, which is used as part of TSS, which I'll explain later. In terms of what's on the Ethereum, there's not really a lot going on there. I think from what there's 10 members, it's low activity, but we have to remember that the majority of the activity and the development and how ThorChain is evolving, allowing dApps to continue building on it, is via ThorChain. So that's probably where the more activity lies and is explained here on the Thor nodes. Thor nodes play a massive part in allowing you to swap natively, which I'll do my best to explain it in layman's terms when we get to the technology side of it. It's mainly written in Go, which is it uses, I think I mentioned before, it uses a very few amount of keywords. So by that I mean, like, if you're writing functions, some languages might have like 1,000 different keywords you can use when you're typing code. This has like maybe like 200 or something like that. Just as an example, just to show you how few there is, and that just makes it a little bit easier to code in terms of the power that those functions can provide. So, as T-Bro mentioned, this activity-wise is very active. 35 merges last month, 8,200 commits in total. As we said earlier, it's been going since 2018, so that's still quite a lot. 631 branches. There are quite a few dApps, analytics, and tools that have been built, which I'll run through a little bit later on. So that's probably where these contribute to. And in terms of merge requests and stuff, you can see here. I don't know if you guys can you see the GitLab where I'm on code review.
No, sir.
Almost. Okay, let me bring it over to.
Oh yeah. We're still looking at the analysis paper.
Oh, cool. Let me bring it up on it.
There we go.
Thank you. So yeah, you can see that there is a lot of work going on here, and what they tend to do is, this is very similar to what I've seen in my real life job, to be honest, where you have people, developers and contributors commit, and then you would have code reviewers checking numerous amount of times before code is merged in. Yeah, there's so much. Now, the other reason why I'm bringing this up as well is because in terms of the audit side of it, you can view the audits either via the ThorChain.org website or from the GitHub, which, as I've mentioned previously, doesn't seem to be in use anymore. The last audit that I've seen publicly available was, I think it was August 2021, which was like ages ago. From what I saw in the Discord, I think there is another one in progress, but between 2021 and now, from what I can see, I suppose like the audits or checks seem to be just peer reviews from like the contributors and coders within the community. So that is something to bear in mind. It's quite commonplace in companies I've seen in real life and stuff, but that does I've sort of factored that into the scores later on as well, because it does make it difficult for us to do what we normally do to check through the audit information. So that's a bit about the team there. We've got a list of like the most recent, most active contributors. Heimdall mentioned, I suppose, for those that are really deep into DeFi. I don't know if that's the thing. I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it's not the same Heimdall that worked on the other ThorFi. I'm pretty sure they're different. Some of these profiles are private, as mentioned as well. So
when we're dealing with Norse mythologically themed stuff, no one owns it, so anybody can kind of use it. So it doesn't shock me that there will be some confusion of identity there.
Yeah, because I have seen that before. I think someone was saying, "Are you the same person from the other one, ThorFi?" But I'm pretty sure they're not. So cool.
When you go into a Viking forum and you find 10 guys named Ragnar.
That's it. Okay. So, what's the next one on the list? ThorSwap and synthetics. Now, ThorSwap. This is ThorSwap here. So this is the DEX on ThorChain. There are other DEXs like this available on ThorChain as well, which have been developed, I think, by community and some of the partners they've got. Now, I did use this for the first time on, was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember now. And I did make a little position in Avalanche, which you can see there. So just to show it works, really. And yeah, I think I put in like 5 AVAX, and you get a percentage every day until you feel like you can redeem it.
This actually might be a very unique opportunity. Do you have any other comments on the way the savings mechanism works? Because I can sort of demonstrate the other side of this from the Bitcoin and Ether side.
Yeah, so I'm gonna dive in a little bit into that. So,
okay,
ThorSwap relies on, it's got like a Savers Vault staking, and it's got lending. So in terms of, say, the Savers Vault, it relies upon something called synthetic assets. I watched a video about 12 times trying to get my head around it, and I think the way it's explained to work is when you decide to deposit. So if I say deposited my Avalanche, it mints something called synthetic Avalanche, and what it does with my real Avalanche that I've put in my real Avalanche asset is it sells half of it to purchase Rune. Now Rune, if you think of Rune as like the I suppose the best way to think about it is like this stable coin of the environment, although it's not a stable coin, might add. It's used to sort of pair with every single asset that's available on there. So your BTCs, ETHs, Avalanches, and the other ones they've got available as well. Now, when half of the Avalanche or your asset, your BTC or ETH, whatever, is sold to purchase Rune, what happens is that intravenously feeds into the arbitrages that are on the ThorSwap, that are using ThorSwap synthetics. And what they would do is they would see that you've sold your AVAX, which means their AVAX position, their rune position has increased because you sold the AVAX to purchase rune. And what they would then do is sell their rune to purchase AVAX at a lower price, essentially, to try and balance it out. Now, your AVAX and your now rune, your 50-50 split, then goes into the liquidity pool. The liquidity pool is intravenously fed in by arbitrage fees generated from the swaps and from the other partners that use the ThorChain protocol. The liquidity for the Savers Vault has a cap. This is to mitigate risk. There are elements of risk which I'll talk about a little bit later on, and there's also some protocol owned liquidity as well to further mitigate the risk of, let's say, there's a mass sell-off for whatever reason of the liquidity pool being depleted. So you've got this synthetic asset, which is a representation of your portion of the liquidity, which has got these risk mitigation strategies in there. And then you leave it for a amount of time, you accrue more of your synthetic asset based on the fees generated, essentially, in the arbitrage. And then when you want to redeem or withdraw your asset, I'll talk a little bit about the terminology in a bit as well that they use. The synthetic asset is then burned, and what happens is your representation of that is pulled out. Your rune is then sold and then used to purchase the remaining avalanche, so that you can then get your synthetic equivalent back in real terms. And then another arbitrage opportunity is then there for the arbitragers to do the opposite of what you did when you purchased, to try and balance out the liquidity pool. And then the opposite process is then repeated over and over again for all future transactions.
And fees are generated during this process, which are rewarded to two sides of that liquidity. If
Correct.
you happen to be just a one-sided saver, then the max you can earn is half of what the two-sided saver could earn.
Yeah, that's correct. So that's the best way I could explain that one. Bit of a mouthful.
Well, it's noteworthy that in your stream, you showed the numbers of the savings vaults, which accurately correspond to what I can see on multiple metrics. So no one's numbers disagree, because we're looking at on-chain ledger layer 1 stuff. Yeah, this whole protocol is bloated. It's going to be obnoxious to use, and it might even be somewhat gas expensive to play with this. But all of that said, it works.
It does. Absolutely.
And that's kind of a techno magic miracle in and of itself.
And if you wanted to have a look at some more diagrams and other explanations as well, I have put some sources in here. These are all actually recommended as well by the ThorChain Discord group and the core team. They've also recommended a YouTuber called Grassroots, who has got a lot of explanations, some really, really good ones as well. They are very technical, of the more sort of lower level detail which you can get into around the synthetic assets of how it works. But yeah, I think my explanation is probably as high level as I can put it in simplistic terms.
I think you did great.
Cheers. The other side as well is you are also able to participate as a liquidity provider which pretty much works exactly the same way. The only difference is here is you are open to impermanent loss, which is one of the risks. And although you can get protection, I think it's only up until a certain amount. So you are still subject to impermanent loss as a liquidity.
According to what I've read on their site, it's actually they have a scaling mechanism for it. So if you provide liquidity for a certain amount of time, they will give you effectively full and permanent loss coverage, but only if you've provided the liquidity for an amount of time. If you provide more liquidity, that resets the clock for all of your impermanent loss. So you actually have to wait the clock back out if you want to add more assets to say.
Yeah, I think it's 100 days for what they were saying. If you do anything before that, then you're in the hands of the crypto gods. But
well, they said, from what I understand, small amounts withdrawn before that don't even affect the impermanent loss clock. But it's deposits. If you deposit more, your impermanent loss clock is reset, and you got to wait the full 100 days again.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing and this is probably where we go onto the risks as well, is the other thing to keep in mind is there are risks around things like slippage and stuff as well. So if you get in when, say, there's like what they call like a good level of deep liquidity, you also have to pay network and slippage fees, so you can't get away from that. But when you then leave, if you're leaving at a time where a lot of people are selling and stuff, then your slippage could be a lot higher, which would eat into any, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but potential profits there. So you may actually end up coming out with less than you put in. So that's one of the risks on there. There is a link I've got to all the detailed risks that they've mentioned, but I'll just give a sort of a high-level summary. The other thing to keep in mind is, which I was sort of alluding to earlier, is the liquidity pools have got these risk mitigation strategies in there for a good reason. You know, if there's mass sell-offs, that could cause a problem. So that's why ThorChain have stepped in to have to own part of the liquidity pairings. That's also why they have things like a savers cap, because if you had, say, like something ridiculous, like more than 50% of that liquidity pool has got savers in it, and you just had like less in terms of liquidity providers, you're essentially like you're under collateralized, which would pose a risk as well. So they have purposely, I think the one that I was looking at was something like 30% of the pool. There are others that have got different percentages as well, so they are managing that pretty well at the moment, which is good to see. The other thing is, I suppose, again, another risk mitigation strategy they've got, which is a centralization risk, is they have the ability to hold trading entirely on the chain. So just stopping all trades. I think they actually recently did that a couple of days ago, because there was a potential exploit that someone had found in they found in the network, which was being analysed.
Yeah, so that is correct. I did see that, and fair play to them. That's why I do believe that legitimately there is a place for, you know, being able to stop trading. Binance have done it before. Yeah. You know, if there's a risk, you need to stop. Yeah, and you need to stop, and you need to patch. So I'm okay with it to an extent. Obviously, the risk is relatively anonymous team. So, you know, if they do stop trading, turn it into a big, massive honeypot, which I don't think they ever would, by the way, there's a risk.
No.
So,
absolutely. And yeah, as you said, that was just a precaution, and it demonstrates again, you know, that they've got some very impressive monitoring and proactive measures in place to do what they're trying to do for the betterment and greater good. So, and I suppose, yeah, the obvious thing as well is, this is a complex bit of tech. Dexes and bridges and blockchains are probably a little bit more susceptible to hacks and exploits just because the tech involved and everything intertwined with it is a lot more complex. So they have mentioned that as well, in a slightly different way, but there is potential if there is an exploit that the LPs could be drained, for example. So that's just something to be aware of. And then as a liquidity provider, as we've mentioned, you are subject to permanent loss. But again, that's, I think everyone is well aware of their risks. It's the same on every other DEX I've seen or central exchange that offer that service. So it's not anything specific to ThorChain or ThorSwap. Okay, so that's a bit about the synthetic assets. And one thing I wanted to point out as well, something that I've seen that I did quite like, was when where is it? I think it's this one. When I used to work in pensions, there's a lot of terminology that I was used to, things like redemptions, drawdowns, flexible drawdowns, redeeming, that kind of thing. They're very sort of financial, professional-based terms. When I was looking through ThorChain Finance, I'll just show you on here as well. You can see that same terminology used in there as well, which I've not really seen that in other DeFi protocols. So it just sort of shows like a bit of professionalism, a bit of long-term terminology. I don't know if that's purposeful or not, but it's just something I picked up on, especially when I was playing around with that little bit of Avalanche. Now, this is probably one of my favourite bits because I'm proper nerd when it comes to this sort of thing. But analytics and metrics, again, very similar to what we saw with GMX. There's so many stats you can just pull off from their Explorer, Thor Yield, dApps that the community have built, ViewBlock, June Analytics. I'll just show you some of the ones that I've picked up on here. So this is ThorChain. This is their network. You can see the swap history volume on there. You can see the pool depth it's got as well. What else we got? Latest transactions, information about the Rune as well, which is quite good on there to see. You've got node information as well as the active nodes, and I think this is that's their location as well, how long they've been going for. There's the status as well, so you can. That's not having a good day, is it?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. There's quite a lot in there, and the vaults as well. So I think this is to do with TSS, which I'll talk a little bit about when I get to the consensus side of it. Total value locked from flip side, room prices, price information as well. There was an outage, I think, so that explains that a bit. It's nothing to be alarmed about. And then on June Analytics, so this was quite interesting. When I was looking at it, I saw this is the amount of total, I think, users or holders of Rune. So that's been sort of slowly going up the past couple of years or so, which is good. And then you can see transactions using Rune as well, which I think is probably a sign of the times at the moment. We're still pretty much in a bear market. We've got the DEX volume. So these are the two big ones on Ethereum, Uniswap and SushiSwap. These are the addresses. So this is ViewBlock, which has got Rune embedded there, which you can see. The Rune held by various wallets and stuff. So, and then on the ecosystem, you've got all these dApps and analytical tools and wallet exchanges. Some of the wallets actually also allow for direct swaps as well. Native swaps from say BTC to ETH, etc., vice versa. And yeah, I think most of these are all built on ThorChain as well. That's quite a big list. And they are a mixture of community and partnerships and stuff as well. So yeah, this was Grassroots Crypto was the YouTuber I was mentioning earlier. He's got tons of videos, really, really well explained. If you want to dive really deep into the technological side of it. So yeah, have a look. All those links are listed there. I recommend checking out if you're really into this. In terms of the tokenomics, the total supply is just under 500 million. That's the exact figure there. This is how much circulating supply that I picked up as of yesterday. This is locked. I think it's a combination of the reserve supply and use for bonding as well, which is part of the Savers Vault mechanism. And then in terms of its purpose, it has got multiple utility. So you've got governance. I was tempted to, I didn't really have a lot of time to go into the governance, but it is available on the ThorChain docs and it does look quite complicated. I don't think they're trying to encourage the government side of it too much from what I was reading on there, but if you've got a bit of time, I'd recommend having a look for yourselves. It's obviously incentives for node runners. They take people running nodes incredibly seriously. It is stressed a couple of times in the docs and on the Discord. You've got to be in it and serious about it. And then obviously for liquidity management as the sort of underlying asset paired with BTC, ETH, Avalanche, etc. In terms of the website, again, we do our checks using Whois and also VirusTotal. So I looked at ThorChain.net and also ThorChain.org. They use ThorChain.net is used by name.com. And this was actually registered with Google LLC, which was that's the first for me to see. I also had a look at VirusTotal which I'll just bring up the results on here. And this is, again, it's just an indicator. It's not guaranteed, but this all came back with a clean result on both websites. So again, that was good to see as well. I think we had the same results for the last project we reviewed as well. So I just seen something come up on the chat. Is anyone? No? Cool. Now, in terms of technology, if you remember when we looked at Viot, this is 4 months ago or so, they use something called Cosmos SDK, which shorthand for software development kit. Cosmos is essentially it allows you to use a proof of stake or Byzantine proof of stake mechanism. It's used for its flexibility. You can program a number of different languages via the Cosmos SDK. It seems to be very flexible in terms of that respect and quite easy for developers to use. You can also actually swap out and use different consensuses and adapt your own ones as well, which is what ThorChain have done. And I think I wouldn't say Cosmos is the most cutting edge in terms of tech, but what ThorChain have done with it is impressive. So as well as using the Cosmos SDK, they've utilized something called, if I can get the name on there, where is it? TSS. When each Thor node has got what they call daemons involved, which an example in like the real world would be, I don't know, if you're trying to call someone, right? You need their phone number, you need a network connection, and a station in order to send the signals. That's all held within this daemon on the Thor node. And
I got you. Threshold signature scheme.
That's the one. Yes. So thank you. And that is essentially, it's like it's a different type of like multi-sig in a way, and I'll come to that bit in a little bit. So if I want to swap Ethereum for BTC, I go to ThorSwap, I put my request in to do that, and then what happens is that request is picked up by a validator on the ThorChain, which sees the request and checks it out amongst the other validators. Once they get a majority, and they'll check the Thor node to see the destination address of where it's going to, the amounts and stuff, and they'll also see that request on the Ethereum chain. They will then send that via the Thor node over to the BTC address, and that's picked up by an Asgard vault. Now the Asgard vaults act as the TSS, and I think there's like 20 involved. One of those 20 is randomly is selected, and they would then verify the information from the majority validators, and they'd sign it to say, "Yep, we're happy for this transaction to go through," and then broadcast that on the Thor chain, on the BTC chain, and I think back on Ethereum as well. And that's very much at a higher level how it works. So it's sort of two-pronged. You've got your proof of stake, and then you've got this this group of signatures at the end that sort of rubber stamp and broadcast that transaction at the very end. Yeah, that's how they both work in unison.
I found the description from the official frequently asked questions. It reads, the TSS acts as a leaderless vault to hold funds within the network. It's like a multi-sig wallet, but there's no one set of private keys that could be stolen. As a collective, all the node operators work together to create a TSS vault, and the supermajority are required to sign a transaction for funds to leave the vault. Node operators need to bond more than 1.5x. In bond, the vault they can secure to ensure they do not collude to steal funds.
Yeah. So that is correct. And also that example is the one I got from the developer on their YouTube, on their YouTube channel, that I was looking at last night. So yeah, that's also the way I explained it. So it looks like it's got double use. The one I've described is purely for the swap element of native transactions to say like ETH, BTC to Avalanche, and vice versa. So beyond the technology, if we look at the competition, so you've got, in terms of swaps, there isn't much at the moment in terms of being able to swap natively.
Well, let's be honest here. There's actually a lot, but there's not a lot that lets you do it without KYC.
Yeah, true. So in terms of DEXs, there isn't a lot, but yeah, there are certainly some on central exchanges. There's obviously HydroNet, which are doing the same thing, but probably look differently in terms of tech. And there was one that I've seen come up on Cardano yesterday. I can't remember the name of it. I just saw it in a tweet. So
the HydroNet boys consider ThorChain a rival, but they don't even consider it. If you ask them, they'd probably say, they're a rival, but they're not really on our radar because we're doing something different.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of looking at it. And then ThorChain itself, I mean, it does mention a few times it's proof of stake layer 1 blockchain. So as you can imagine, it's got a lot of competition with other layer 1 types. I think the difference is ThorChain, I suppose their main feature is their focus on DEXs, really. And I suppose the other thing they've got in their favour is, it's been going since 2018. So it is, in crypto terms, heavily battle tested.
Yeah. I like to say that crypto years are dog years. So
Yeah, pretty much.
ThorChain's going on 30.
Yeah. Oh, I'd like to be 30 again. And then we've got partnerships and applications. Again, if you guys want to have a look, it is on the ecosystem, but there's a lot. They've got a lot of builds on there that have been there over the years. Now, in terms of security, I did mention earlier about the audit. This is the one from August 2021. I've put it there if you wanted to have a read, but I think because this has evolved so much over the past 2 years, and they're clearly, using peer reviews and the like on their GitLab, I don't think there's a lot of point in us going through something that, quite frankly, is obsolete now. But I just wanted to show you that there was, this is the most recent audit, just for reference. That's it. I did write it down. I knew it was somewhere. So they haven't got multi-sig, but they do use this threshold signature scheme. But similar in terms of signing transactions on chain. So summary, as we've mentioned earlier, they do have a number of proactive measures, and I've got the link here to the security in their docs, just to monitor for potential, and that's the key as well. Like they don't just wait for something to happen. If they spot something they think might be a problem, they'll act on it, and that's in part, mainly where that halt trades functionality comes in to protect investment as well. Now, just conscious of time, so in terms of the score, I tried to summarise the sections a bit, and obviously if you want to have a look at the full details, then this is available on our website. But in terms of where they gain the most points, I think in terms of the contract, it's not a proxy. We can see the code is all public from what I can see. It's definitely not forked. So they gained a lot of points there. One of the interesting things as well is that there was no tax involved. Obviously, they've got network fees, as you'd expect, and slippage for the Thor swap decks, but there was no sell buy tax or anything that I've seen on there. I did mark it down for a mint function in terms of the the synthetic assets, because there is a potential, if that was to be exploited, that could actually affect the LP, which does contain rain. So I've called that one out. I think that's to be fair. I know we mentioned about the whole trading, and I've mentioned they're absolutely clear for security purposes, but obviously if I still wanted to go, I can't. So that is a centralization risk. Well, I do reiterate the purposes for it. Team of multi-sig, I've gone a bit sort of half on that one. Now, this is interesting. I'm pretty sure they have registered somewhere, but I've not actually been able to find any links. All I've seen is something mentioned as registered in Zugzug in Switzerland, which I think might be a virtual office.
I was going to say, it's almost certain to be a virtual office. There were a lot of big crypto providers, centralized and decentralized, who have had offices there.
Absolutely. So I've just sort of gone in the middle on that one. And then, they don't have a multi-sig. They do have the TSS instead. But again, the people on it are anon. We don't really know who they are, so we have to be objective on that. And I've just put, I've just reflected that accordingly, which I think is
reflect that.
Yeah, which I think is fair. The owner is public, so this is again guy of 9 realms. I have some of the devs I think are public. 1 or 2 I've seen, some aren't. So I've gone midway on that one, just to be fair.
Yep.
I haven't seen that Gavin's run any previous unethical projects that I've looked at, so that was good to see. We don't obviously know all the team, but bearing in mind, I have to be fair, it's been battle tested since 2018, so I think it's fair to say that the process and structure they've got going, it seems to be working at the moment. Now, in terms of the audit, again, I've had to be absolutely objective and fair here, because the only audit I've got from our perspective that we can, physically see and summarise is back in 2021. And I appreciate, they've got all these security measures in place and their peer reviews. because it is such a complex system, I have sort of marked it as a 1 because obviously
that's completely fair to me, because from my perspective, a system this complex needs to be regularly audited. And if they don't have a public facing audit in 2 years, yeah, that's a 1.
Yeah, I think just to be fair, and also, they've been hacked in the past, which is not anything specific or shade on ThorChain because, let's be honest, like DEXs, bridges, and chains do get hacked, especially it seems to be more proof of stake. So I just have to be fair on that one. And then they've done really well on everything else in terms of the, technology. Again, I've gone mid on that one. I wouldn't say Cosmos SDK is the most cutting edge, but what they've done with the tech is in unison with TSS is impressive, especially for a non KYC. So they've got middle marks for that one. And then they've done really well in terms of the socials and information. There is so much information available. They've got separate groups, discords. There's an university, I think, like a learning university. If you wanted to learn more specifically about ThorChain, there's loads of demos. I think they've handpicked a very good influencer on YouTube to explain things in a very clear technical perspective as well. So they've done really well on that. All the followers seem genuine. I've got a paid follower Wonk account, so I can see accounts up to 250k. They've got 190k followers, so they did really well on that front of it as well. And in the Discord, like every single question has been answered. That's been a couple of people fighting in there, but there's not been any short, sharp answers. There's here's some docs, have a look for yourself. Very transparent answers in there, so they did really well. And I think the score 71%. I think that's a fair reflection for the type of product that we've got on chain and its intricacy with the rest of the ecosystem. So the risk as well, this is important. I've just summarized the ones that we've taken from the LP and savers, as well as some general risks that might affect your investment as well, just to be aware of. And that's the ThorChain, guys. That's a little bit on Savers Vaults, the Rune token, and the Thor Swap ecosystem.
Yep. And this is the part where I get to come in right at the end with the slam dunk and show my own screen with some cool shit. All right, so here's my deposit direct to ThorChain. This was tracked, as you can see from the web URL. This is my actual private cold wallet. Those are the addresses. And in order to track it on ThorYield, I had to plug my public addresses in. Because I did that, though, it gives me a total current value of everything, average realized growth, projected annual growth that is based on the current prices averaged over the past 2 weeks. So that's where the APRs are going to come from. They're not fixed. They're super, super, super flexible because obviously fees are the source of this growth. And I can bounce over right here to my keep key. This is my Shapeshift Keep Key cold wallet. You can actually see right here that the original deposit numbers, 1.02 and 0.087, they actually completely correspond. It's totally on chain. Everything really is on the chain. My wallets provided this liquidity deposit. And if I wanted to withdraw, this would be my fee relative to the current gas conditions of the network. Even more curious, you don't actually see the interest reflected because it's on chain. The only thing that's going to be reflected is that I made a deposit. In order to know exactly how much you got to go to manage, you call the withdraw, and then it'll tell you right there. There it is.
Yeah.
If I did want to withdraw everything, I would be subject to slippage, but they tell me right away 1,762 Satoshis worth of slippage. And I have not seen this number change. I check this routinely just because I want to see if the slippage is changing. It's not changing. It's gone up by 1 Satoshi.
Yeah, it depends on the BTC liquidity pool is quite deep, so I'm not expecting that to change much. But the others,
Ethereum is another equation entirely, though, because
Yeah.
Ethereum doesn't run that deep. And you can actually, if I go back to the ThorChain, you can see this again reflected in the Savers vaults. The Bitcoin liquidity is 88% out of 100% full. Ethereum is barely going on 60%. But that being said, the APRs are still reflected, and you can see the exact number of depositing wallets on each chain, which I think is probably the coolest part. Is it's how many banks tell you how many account holders exist. Like this is a level of radical transparency that in crypto we ought to strive for. So
Avalanche one has gone up 6% since yesterday. Because when I put it in, I think it was at 33.8%. That's interesting.
Yep. So there have been a bunch of Avalanche gone in here since you last checked it. And this data is entirely public and accurate across multiple websites that track it. So that's probably the best thing about it, is that all the data reflects and is accurate.
Absolutely.
That is ThorChain.